Support for this podcast comes from the law firm of Davis Malm. Whether you're a developer, property owner, manager, or commercial tenant, their real estate attorneys know the lay of the land, not just the law. Learn more at davismalm.com. Support for this podcast comes from Boston University's Questrom School of Business, presenting the Is Business Broken podcast, featuring conversations about the role of business, stakeholder relations, and government at bu.edu/Questrom or wherever podcasts are available.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. April is Earth Month, which is a time to reflect on the one planet we have, and for a lot of us, that's an opportunity to discuss climate change and how it's affecting our communities. Now, throughout the month, we've been featuring weekly conversations with some of the people in Greater Boston working to build our region's resilience in the face of a changing climate. And so, as the month comes to a close, our final guest for these Earth Month discussions is Leslie Jonas. She's an Indigenous land and water conservationist and an Elder Eel clan member of the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. So let's get right into it. Leslie, thank you so much for joining us here on The Common.
Good afternoon, Daryl. Thanks for having me, and happy Earth Month. What my day-to-day existence looks like is I identify as an Indigenous land and water conservationist. Going back about to the mid-1970s, I was involved in an institute on Cape Cod called the New Alchemy Institute. And they really were on the cutting edge of alternative energy, agriculture, bioshelter, and aquaculture. All to say that they were doing green things long before you and I probably even thought about them. So that set the tone, the pace for my interest in environmentalism later on in life. And so with a very good friend in Mashpee, the founder of the Native Land Conservancy, Ramona Peters, began to help her build this organization in land conservation, in Indigenous land conservation, the first of its kind on the East Coast. And what we've been doing for 14 years is protecting land and providing access for Indigenous peoples to practice cultural lifeways and to provide spaces for Indigenous peoples to practice historic Indigenous land management practices that have been practiced for thousands of years in this region.
I want to ask you about that. Can you talk about some of those practices and how they play a role in preserving the environment?
Yeah, so you would be tapping into traditional ecological knowledge, which is
Tech,
yeah, which is a trending topic. In the past 5 years, I've seen an increase in interest in other organizations, conservation groups, and otherwise to include traditional ecological knowledge in the work that they're doing. And this is, as a lot of people know, based in oral tradition and history that lives within the hearts and the spirits of Indigenous people, and it's passed down through the generations and practiced over long periods of time. Communities of people living very, very close to the land in relationship and in kinship with the land and the water from which they come, called the homelands, and spend hundreds, if not thousands of years observing. So working in relationship with, in observation, and it's very experiential, it's very qualitative, it's very intuitive, it's nonlinear, it's creative. And the beauty of traditional ecological knowledge is it's not colonized. So it lives in our hearts and in our spirit, in our souls, deep within, and we pass it down through stories that my grandparents and great-grandparents shared with me, and I share with my daughter. But tech evolves. The tech that was practiced hundreds of years ago is not the same traditional ecological knowledge living in relationship with a certain place that you might see today because of things, the impact of industry, extractive industry, pollution, human impact, negative human impact to the natural world, something we didn't experience hundreds of years ago. So post-colonial times presented a whole different picture of how we would live in relationship with the natural world. And so tech evolves and it basically guides us. It tells us. We see the various signs in the numbers of the species, how they change, what invasives are doing, and how many different kinds of invasives are coming in, what kinds of threats they pose to the native biodiversity of this region, and how we can help slow that down.
Mm-hmm. And, there's, I guess, a lot of different groups and organizations have their ideas and approaches to addressing climate change and preserving the environment. Can you just speak to the importance of including the Indigenous perspective in that work?
Yeah, you bring up an important topic, Daryl, one I've been working on for quite a few years. And I don't know if you've heard of Woodwell Climate Research Center here in Woods Hole, which is world-renowned, doing global scale work in climate. And they work with a lot of tribes in Alaska on inclusion, diversifying the methods by which science is introducing solutions, but complementing and sort of increasing the scale and the scope and the magnitude of the solution by including these indigenous knowledge systems by which people lived and thrived. So did all the four-leggeds, two-leggeds, winged, and finned for millennia. So the climate work that's being done by big organizations like Woodwell are starting to, and have been for the past few years, including indigenous knowledge in not just observation in what tribes have been witnessing and living. We've been watching, the impacts of climate I've seen it for 50 plus years now. We've only begun to talk about solutions in the last 10 years. Mm. And so that indigenous perspective is super important because our decades and centuries of observation have incredibly powerful value to the bars and the graphs and the charts of Western science.
Mm-hmm. Leslie, I want to take a break here, but when we get back, I want to talk about what our systems and institutions can do better to include Indigenous voices in the conversation about climate and environment preservation. So we'll be right back.
Did you kill Marlene Johnson?
I think you're one of the first people to have actually asked.
From WBUR and ZSP Media, this is Beyond All Repair, a new podcast about an unsolved murder that will leave you questioning everything.
Somebody should be in jail for murdering my sister.
A woman who's never been believed.
As long as they think I have done this, then they're not looking for who actually did this.
And that's what makes it a cold case.
No, it's a botched case.
And a search for the truth, once and for all.
Wow, it just gets more interesting.
Beyond All Repair. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Be careful. You're digging in a place that's been very peaceful for a while.
Do it anyway. Dig.
And we're back with Indigenous land and water conservationist Leslie Jonas. So Leslie, you were just explaining to us the importance of including the Indigenous perspective when it comes to addressing climate change and preserving the environment. But now I want to ask you, what can our systems and institutions do better to include Indigenous voices in those conversations?
Well, Daryl, sometimes these are tough conversations and I have them here and there. I present in a lot of higher ed arenas, Harvard, MIT, co-teach a class at MIT. And when the conversation comes up around, inclusion and what that really looks like, we have to really roll up our sleeves and dig down. And sort of decolonize some of the assumptions that are made in what relationship building really looks like with Indigenous peoples. Mm-hmm. When you look at historically what's taken place in this country and other places around the world to Indigenous peoples, there's this huge missing piece that's necessary in working with tribal nations and tribal communities across a lot of fronts. And one is building a trusting relationship, is having some kind of a lifeline into the community to be able to talk to people, gain the trust of the people, to be able to work with the people. We're not just going to give up our traditional ecological knowledge because scientists come looking for it, because President Biden in an MOU in 2021 said, you must increase your inclusion, representation, and you've got to work with the local tribes and start to look at the different knowledge systems that can really support and better provide solutions to all of the trending issues. And the sad part for me, when it's kind of twofold for me, there's two sides to the coin, which is one is I feel a deep sadness that now we're being asked to be included after hundreds of years of being dismissed and oppressed. Then you see something like the Dakota Pipeline happening at Standing Rock. And this is in recent years, right? And by the same token, ask us for our traditional ecological knowledge to sort of save the planet. So there's this dichotomy and there's this irony in some of the work that's out there. And I think we need to get clear on that. We need to people need to look inward and check themselves. There's entitlement and there's privilege. And there's, a post-colonial mindset. There's a settler mindset that assumes we're here to serve.
Dealing with these forces can be very discouraging. And I just wonder, do you ever get to a dark place when doing this work? And if so, how do you bring yourself back into a place of hope and moving forward?
It's a great question, Daryl. I reconnect with the natural world. I go out onto the land, or I go to the water, and I sit and I think there's so much work ahead of us, but that we are helping to pave the way for the next generation to pick up the feather, pick up the talking stick, pick up the baton, whatever you want to call it, and move it to the next level, move the needle, because we take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back all the time. The only expectation we have is of ourselves to act in a responsible way with the natural world. And it's in reciprocity that we talk about. And I think when that sort of spirited kind of thinking is overlooked by folks who want to work with us, who aren't really even connected to land, but it's such a great idea in their eyes and it's trending. And when I feel that I'm working with someone who's not really connected, I'm sad, but I try to use what I know and have as a teaching tool and try to educate gently. I don't think it's really my job to be out there, teaching people very, very instinctually natural ways that we were all born with. It's innate to feel connected to the Earth Mother because she provides for us. She has always given to us. When are we giving back? When are we going to balance this out? I like to work with people and organizations who see that and understand that and are all about helping to bring back the balance that's so lacking.
Yeah. And when we talk about bringing back that balance, a lot of this work is going to fall on the next generation. Can you talk about how you work with young people?
That one puts a smile on my face because that's my favorite group to work with, our students and our youth. Because we're leaving a hell of a burden on them. I work with students from Harvard, from MIT, Sloan School of Management, and these guys are so excited about doing good work. Part of me is sad that they have to carry the burden, but to see some of the enthusiasm and the will to thrive and survive and help our Earth Mother heal is a beautiful thing.
Understood. Leslie, thank you so much for coming through and talking with us.
Katapatush, as we say in Wampanoag, which is thank you, Daryl. And, if we all do one small thing every day, change one little lifestyle, it's not like the everyday person can take down, fossil fuels, but we can do other things in our day-to-day existence to help make a difference. And I think that we all owe that to the Earth Mother. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. That's Indigenous land and water conservationist and elder Eel Clan member of the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe, Leslie Jonas. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common. If you want to get in touch with us, head on over to Instagram, hit us up at WBUR The Common, or send us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I will talk to you tomorrow.